Hey everyone, it's Alexander Robinson. Welcome to the channel, and this is my review for Superman, which is written and directed by James Gunn, is the second reboot of the Superman film series, and the second attempt at a DC cinematic universe, here called simply the DC Universe. Even though this is the start of a new cinematic universe, and once again it's starting with a new Superman movie, this actually takes place 3 years into Clark Kent / Kal-El being Superman. And in this movie, he's battling against Lex Luthor, who has devised a plan to not only kill Superman, but also turn the public view of Superman against him. Basically, it's to benefit Lex Luthor's own personal gain and feed his ego that is so obsessed with hating Superman, while Superman himself not only has to deal with public fallout, but also the fact that some of his ideals have been warped and he feels very conflicted. Let's be honest about this. The Superman movies have not had the best track record in 45 years. We all know the Richard Donner Superman from 1978, Superman the movie. It is a classic. It is the first ever feature-length superhero movie not based off a TV show. And it basically set the stage for every superhero movie that would follow. And then Superman 2 is an excellent sequel, whether you're watching the theatrical cut or the Richard Donner cut. I think both versions of Superman 2 are great. And then you had a huge drop-off with 3, an even bigger drop-off with 4, which is hilarious in its own way, but definitely a far cry from the first Superman movie. Superman Returns was a decent attempt, and clearly a love letter to the first 2 movies, but unfortunately, it feels very outdated considering how superhero movies have evolved since 2006. And then when we come to Man of Steel, I have an admiration for that movie in some aspects. It doesn't have the same tone as the classic Superman movies. We see Superman punching more people than he did before, and I think Henry Cavill did a good job in this first movie. But unfortunately, there's a lot of it that doesn't work. Some of it where I just think it's flat out ridiculous and betrays the entire notion of Superman. And then things got even worse for the character with Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice. And also, that was the first movie that kind of indicated that this is the official start of DC's extended universe, because technically Man of Steel was made not with the intention to make it a cinematic universe. But not to drag this intro out any longer, basically the way Superman was depicted in the Man of Steel follow-ups and how the DCEU played out was terrible. It all just crashed and burned, even if there are a handful of movies that I really do enjoy. So now we come to James Gunn's Superman, which is the best movie in the franchise since 1980, and a really good start up to this new DC extended universe. Here's why Superman works for me, why this version is probably the best we've gotten since Christopher Reeve, because it humanizes Superman. And I have to emphasize this again with the DCEU Superman. That was not Henry Cavill's fault. He makes for a really good Superman in Man of Steel, but once you get to BVS and Justice League, it's clear that Zack Snyder, Joss Whedon, the writers, or Warner Brothers themselves didn't care about the character at all and didn't care to actually focus on him and make him interesting. James Gunn makes Superman interesting in this movie by humanizing him. Even though we can't identify with Superman in the sense that we can't fly, we can't shoot lasers out of our eyes, and we're not invincible superheroes, we can identify with him in this movie because he deals with a lot of stress. Without going into spoilers, Superman is dealt with a revelation that has basically twisted his worldview and also what he believed his purpose was for being on Earth. And it makes him very relatable. It makes him more vulnerable than anything, because despite the fact that he can fly and he can do all these incredible things, he still has to deal with the stress of people turning on him. Like, he has basically lost faith in what he thought he was supposed to do. It's something that the DCEU tried to do with Henry Cavill's Superman, but again, didn't really care to follow up on it. This movie actually makes this its central focus for the character, and it also helps that David Corenswet is a really great Superman. I thought he made for a pretty decent Clark Kent as well, but he's much like Robert Pattinson's Batman, where he spends more time in this movie being Superman than he does as Clark Kent. Another aspect that makes this Superman more relatable is his relationship with the other characters. Rachel Brosnahan, who you might know from The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, is really great as Lois Lane. She is kind of more the embodiment of what I expect Lois Lane to be, and at this point in the story, she and Clark Kent are together. They are in a relationship, which is probably the reason why the two of them were announced as Superman and Lois Lane respectively, because they wanted to focus on that Superman-Lois dynamic. And if I had any issue with that, I don't think they focus on it enough, but again, it's Superman's relationship with Lois that helps ground the character. Same with his friendship with Jimmy Olsen, who thankfully is given respect in this movie. Skylar Gassando makes for a really good Jimmy Olsen, where he's not super young, but he's just as awkward and more the comic relief that you would expect Jimmy Olsen to be. However, he does have one of the biggest moments in this movie, which is pretty vital to the plot and makes Jimmy just as big a hero as Superman is. And then of course you have Jonathan and Martha Kent. Why do you say that name? I couldn't help myself. I just couldn't help myself. I will never do that again, I apologize. But the Kents in this movie are more depicted as the typical Southern family. Definitely stereotypical in a way, but you do feel their relationship with Clark. There's a scene in this movie before the big climax with both Clark Kent and Jonathan Kent that nearly brought tears to my eyes. It's a much better relationship than they had in Man of Steel, and it really, again, helps this Superman be more human than previous incarnations. And of course, you can't have Superman without Lex Luthor, and Nicholas Hoult is probably the best film version of Lex Luthor that we have. Nicholas Hoult's Lex Luthor is menacing, he is terrifying, he has this crazed obsession with killing Superman, like he hates his guts, and you get a clear understanding of why he's doing what he's doing. You have no sympathy for him whatsoever because at the end of the day, he is an egotistical billionaire who will throw you under the bus to get what he wants, but at least it's not an overly convoluted motivation like with Jesse Eisenberg's Lex. Some people have said that Nicholas Hoult does for Lex Luthor in this movie what Heath Ledger does for the Joker in The Dark Knight. I'm not sure if I'm quite comfortable saying that, but I will easily say that, again, Lex Luthor, played by Nicholas Hoult in this movie, is probably the best film version that we've gotten. One aspect of the movie that I was actually really worried about that honestly ended up working pretty well was the members of the Justice Gang, Guy Gardner's Green Lantern, Hawkgirl, and Mr. Terrific. I thought they were just going to be shoehorned into this movie and just there to set up the fact that, hey, this is a new cinematic universe, but they actually felt pretty organic to the plot, especially Edi Gathegi, who is the big highlight of those three characters. He's the one that gets the most things to do, he's the one that has some of the cooler action scenes, and it's also nice that this actor gets some sort of redemption in a superhero movie after what they did to him in X-Men First Class, which I love the fact that people still are upset about that, and rightfully so. But he's really good. Nathan Fillion is just so good in this movie as Guy Gardner, making him this complete douchebag with that terrible bowler haircut. Isabela Merced unfortunately doesn't have a whole lot to do as Hawkgirl, but she looks really good in the costume, and I can't wait to see more of her, because of course she's going to be in Peacemaker Season 2, along with the other Justice Gang members. Probably should fix that name. But anyway, I'm sure there's more to come. And there's some other cool cameos in this movie that further emphasize that this is indeed a cinematic universe. One cameo in particular happened before the credits started that made me go, oh, that's really cool, and I can't wait to see more of this character. The characters obviously make this movie what it is, especially how right they get Superman. But of course you have the really good action scenes in this movie. It's a good combination of both the Christopher Reeve Superman movies and the Snyder movies, where you want to see Superman punching people. You want to see these really cool aerodynamic action scenes that Snyder pretty much established in Man of Steel, and you get them here, but you also get many moments where Superman goes out of his way to save people. Yes, he did save people in Man of Steel, but once you get to that big climax in Metropolis, he couldn't care less about everybody in the city. That's not the case here. There's one action scene in this movie involving a giant monster, which, you know, that's my kryptonite, where Superman not only goes out of his way to save people, but animals from all the destruction. So it's a perfect balance between everything that has come before, even with the good stuff that Snyder set up. If I had any issues with the movie though, I think it runs for a little too long, and the movie is visually unappealing to watch, whether it's from the special effects or the cinematography. I'll start with the VFX. A lot of the special effects in this movie do not hold up. They just are very much a special effect. There's one sequence in particular in Lex Luthor's pocket universe that is just straight up ugly to look at. But also I had an issue with the way this movie looks. Now I have no problem with this movie being as bright and hopeful as it is, but I wish they didn't take it so literally, because the movie looks overexposed and just too bright. It doesn't look all that natural, and I hope they fix that down the line with other movies in this new cinematic universe. But other than that, I really don't have much else to say in terms of criticisms. This really is a great Superman movie. Also, it's probably the least James Gunny of James Gunn's superhero movies, because it doesn't really have an emphasis on putting songs throughout, like with the Guardians films and the Suicide Squad. The music is still really good, and the songs that he picks are very scarce. It makes really good use of the John Williams Superman theme, which is iconic, but it doesn't feel the need to have the same sound that John Williams gave. The characters are really good, and of course I have to talk about Krypto, who is really adorable in this movie. He's that dog that loves his owner. He gets overly excited when he sees them, to the point where he actually doesn't know if he's hurting them. So Krypto is great. There's so much to love about this movie, particularly with the characters and just how hopeful it is. So I say worth seeing in your lifetime. This is easily the best Superman movie since Superman 2. It's a great start to this new cinematic universe and has a lot of promise to follow. And considering how terrible the world is right now, this movie came out at the best time it could possibly have come out, because it makes you feel hopeful, it gives you faith in humanity, and it's just fun all around. Right now, it's gonna stick around for my favorites of the year, because it is that fun, and I think I might like this a little more than Thunderbolts in terms of superhero movies this year, but I don't know, they kind of flip-flop back and forth. Let's see what happens when Fantastic Four comes out. But as for Superman, I'm so happy that I can finally say there are 3 Superman movies out there that I really enjoy. And there you go, that's my review for Superman. I hope you enjoyed it. I want to thank you guys so much for watching this review, and I want to give a special thank you to my subscribers and YouTube members right over here. You guys are the reason why this channel continues to grow every day, and if you want to help to financially support the channel, you could do so via YouTube memberships for as little as $1.99 a month. But until next time, I want to know what you guys think about Superman. Whatever your opinions are, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell button to get notifications. If you want to find me elsewhere on the internet, you can find me on these social media platforms and my theme park and travel channel right here on YouTube. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, have a good day and take care of yourselves.